Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Frankie J. Raw with two W's, ready, able, willing, whenever to discuss any sort of topic, controversial or not. And today we're going to be discussing a really good topic. Should non-violent offenders with marijuana convictions be released from prison, considering that in half of the states in the US are legalizing it both medically and recreationally. So that's the topic today. And here I am. Hi, everybody. Again, I'm Frankie J, and I also host the show Frankie J Experience. Thanks, Graciela, for being here today. Um, to those of you that haven't been here, couple things I go over before the show, a little bit of house cleaning, if you will. Since it is a half-hour show, what we like to do is bring up the topic, and anybody's welcome to come up and ask a question or add to the discussion. But we ask that you come up for a quick second, provide your input, question, whatever, and then we'll kindly, remove you from the stage. So that way we can keep the flow of the show going. But I did some research on this, and it's always been very, very interesting to me. And I've always wondered, especially here in New York State, since they've made marijuana legal on even a recreational level for certain amounts you can possess or whatever. But what I did is throughout the past week, I've done some research on it, and I found out a lot of interesting facts about just housing prisoners in general. And in the United States, we have about 2.3 million people that are incarcerated, both on a federal level and state. And and with that being said, we have the highest percentage of incarcerated people in the world, on the planet. The United States houses the most prisoners. It's outrageous, the numbers I found, and many of them, about 87%, are for nonviolent crimes, and it could be anything from drug possession, drug trafficking, whatever. But those numbers are just staggering, and half of the states so far, like I said earlier, in the US have, made marijuana legal both on medical levels and on recreational levels. So with that being said, I fully believe that we should be releasing these prisoners that are in prison being convicted on nonviolent marijuana crimes, especially. And another fact I found is that 40,000 people are incarcerated for non-violent offenses. Again, 87% worldwide is what I meant to say. And then here in the US, it's about 40,000 people are incarcerated for nonviolent marijuana offenses. And 1/10 of the state prisoners um, are in for marijuana possession only, just having marijuana on them. They're in prison, and for the length of time, I didn't really go that deep into my research, but that comes out to 13% are federal prisoners, so on the federal level, and 1/10 are in the state prisons. And these are some numbers from 2020. It was really hard to find numbers for 2022. I'm not certain if they just didn't come up with those numbers yet, or they're still producing those numbers. But according to the FBI, 700,000 people are jailed for just strictly marijuana related convictions. And in some of the states where marijuana is legal, they're still making arrests and putting people behind bars for having marijuana, which is now legal recreationally and medically. So to me, there's a lot of dynamic and a lot of factors that come into that. How much does it cost to house prisoners per day, per year, per month, based on everything: court costs, court fees, paying, employees of these facilities, so on and so forth. And again, these are all just averages that I've found. So, Graciela or Mark, if you have any input on that, or maybe some better intel, it would be greatly appreciated if you wanted to come up and share that. But on average, to house one prisoner and provide them with support. It could be any kind of support, mental health support. It could be teaching them a trade, anything, any sort of support, with that included. It's about $2,500 per year to house a prisoner. And that comes out to mathematically about $130 per day per prisoner. So the numbers are just outrageous. And it's different per state. Each state has their average cost of housing prisoners because of their, normal cost of living. Like in California, it's more expensive than, New York, for example. When you get downstate to New York City, that changes a little bit too. But again, the US has the highest percentage of incarceration, and it spends the most money. New York State, out of all of the states, spends the most money housing prisoners based on convictions alone. Hi, Deborah, welcome to the room. I appreciate you being here, like you said you would be. But and this number right here really got to me too. In 2017, and that's almost 5 years ago, um, California, including, like I said, the court fees, 95,000 per year per inmate to house an inmate. That's like sometimes, I mean, for me, that is double what my work salary was per year, and I'm out working, grinding, and essentially killing myself. And then you got people that are incarcerated and they're getting, meals, housing, programs, access to all kinds of things, college even. $95,000 a year to house a prisoner in New York State. And I was like, wow, that's really weird, because you would think it would be lower based on the cost, on the West Coast being California, being more expensive. So again, it was really hard for me to find, exact statistics for 2022. But in 2021, again, depending on the state and depending on both federal level and state level, the cost per inmate per year are staggering. $18,000 a year to house a prisoner, or any upwards of 70,000 per year, and that's an average. Like I said, it's about 95,000 in California and probably more in New York State. But in New York State, the average cost of housing a nonviolent marijuana, a criminal convicted on marijuana charges, nonviolent, comes out to about $167,000 a year to house one inmate. $167,000 per inmate per year. I mean, just think of that number. I mean, there's tons of people worldwide, nationwide, that would love to have that just as a salary. And out of our tax dollars, we are paying $167,731 per inmate per year. And I mean, it's not just housing them; it's all kinds of services. In New York State, again, it comes out to about $460 per day per inmate for a nonviolent marijuana charge. And in New York State, it has been deemed legal. You can only possess a certain amount of actual marijuana, or you can have a certain amount of plants. But I'm just trying to keep this, basic and not go too deep into, details. But $460 a day for housing an inmate, especially a nonviolent marijuana conviction. It's outrageous to me. And then when you go out to the West Coast, in, let's say, Los Angeles specifically, it's about $145 a day to house an inmate. It is mind blowing, Deborah, isn't it? It's crazy. I was looking at these numbers. I mean, I know on average it's about $100 a day, but when I started digging into it a little bit, finding these numbers, I was sitting there almost having a heart attack. Like $145 a day per inmate is high. But then when you get into like the New York City area, New York, $460 per day per inmate. It's outrageous. It's just outrageous. And I think Deborah wants to come up and let me get her take on this because it's just outrageous. Hi, Deborah. Welcome to Frankie J.
Hi.
Raw. What's happening?
Not much. Come on up. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I was doing some more research this morning on this and I was blown away.
Yeah, and it's and I can't help but think of the impact of the three strikes law on nonviolent offenders, especially for personal use marijuana situations. And we know it has happened where the three strikes law has been impacted or have been put away for the life because of the three strikes law
Yep.
for things like marijuana, which is just mind blowing. It just
Well,
really is.
obviously when they were convicted, right? It was when it was illegal. But moving forward years and years, now that it's legalized, you would think it would be common sense to release some of these prisoners based on convictions that were nonviolent and let's lower the cost. I mean, that affects everybody. I mean, you're paying taxes, right? And can you imagine the impact this would have on lowering taxes just by releasing nonviolent marijuana inmates?
Absolutely. And there has to be something better to be doing for rehabilitation than to just lock somebody away without a chance for a life, right? And we know people have done amazing things in prison. I mean, okay, I'm a benefit of a service dog, and it happens to be one that I rescued from a shelter. But we know there are programs,
Yes.
those skill sets that they can get, training that they can do, and do something useful and contribute and help society when they, have reforming, not just blocking away, because that is part of the problem with some of our system. Not to go on a tirade there, but part of this problem is the lack of re-education, giving job training, like you were talking about from New York, right? Do they still have BOCES in New York programs?
Yeah, they have
Right.
BOCES. Yep.
Things that we can provide training for less money,
Hmm.
right? And give somebody something actionable that they can be a tax-paying citizen and contributing and making a difference in our communities. And okay, yes, I live in a state where marijuana is legal, and I get
Okay.
that because
What state is that?
I'm in California.
Oh, okay. So, all right. So, doesn't that you find it bizarre that
Yes.
how much cheaper it is to house a prisoner in California than it is in New York?
I was actually really surprised by that number. I would have expected it to be on par with New York. Quite frankly, I'm shocked that it's not on par with New York, and wondering why that is. Actually, considering knowing, okay, yeah, I get there are some prisons on Long Island, and Long Island is expensive to live on,
Yeah, like
but
Rikers Island and
right.
places like that, right?
But I can't imagine why there is such a difference in the cost for housing and what is happening with that and why that's happening with that. So I
Well,
don't know.
good question because I do have somewhat of an answer for you on that. In New York State, with it being the highest, what they said is it's mainly because of the employees. There's about 9,000 corrections officers employed in the state of New York, and most of them are unionized, and that puts the cost up too. And then, with that being said, they're paid well. I mean, I know some corrections officers in New York State that are paid more than some of your best professors and the biggest colleges worldwide. Hey, Joanne, welcome. And they also provide high quality health care within 24 hours of an inmate being incarcerated. So you got 9,000 corrections officers. Somebody gets convicted of a crime. They're put in prison, and within 24 hours, they're receiving probably better health care than I receive. And I'm a taxpayer. Joanne's a taxpayer. You're a taxpayer. Graciela is a taxpayer. And these inmates are receiving, yeah, right. Thanks, Joanne. They are. Thank you. Yay, Frankie J. I got my Frankie J shirt on today. Frankie says relax. But it was just I was blown away. And what Deborah and I were just talking about, Joanne, since you just joined, New York State to house a prisoner versus Los Angeles. Los Angeles is about $145 a day per inmate to house them for, everything, programs, food, clothes, commissary, all that. In New York State, it's about $460 a day per inmate. And
Is there a difference in services?
well, the differences that I found is that in New York State, especially New York City, like I said, they receive top quality health care, whereas maybe in California, they're not receiving the same health care as in New York. And when you talk about health care, I mean, the cost can double, triple
Yeah.
sometimes. So, I mean, healthcare is ridiculous. And Joanne, if you have any input on this, because you're very intelligent and you live in Long Island, I'm going to bring her up too with you, Deborah. Um, Joanne, what do you think?
What do I say? Can you hear me okay? Because I'm driving.
Yeah, I can see you driving.
Oh, you can't? Well, here. Hey, guys, this is what it looks like in New York. I just, went to get a COVID test to be on a set on Friday. So
Oh, cool.
anyway, being that I have a bachelor's in criminal justice,
Mhm.
and what is sad is that it cost $30,000 a year in the 70s
Yes.
to house an inmate. And, look, I don't know. I'm between and betwixt because they should get good health care, but not better than our citizens that pay
No.
taxes. I mean, we're very unequal. I mean,
Well,
we are.
let's do this.
Go ahead.
460 times 365. That's $168,000 a year per inmate in New York City, in New York State, to house an inmate. $168,000 a year. When you could release them, nonviolent marijuana conviction prisoners, back into society to be, like Deborah said, let them out, put them into society, let them
Well, I
work,
think
let them
they
pay
are.
taxes.
In New York State, I think they are. And
Oh,
in New
they're
York State, I don't know. And in New York State, this is what I heard. I'm not sure it's fake news. And in New York State, they're doing a lottery so that they can open up dispensaries.
well, and that,
I
yeah,
mean,
I actually read that they're allowing some of these inmates to get out of prison because they were growing to get into prison. So why not let them
right,
get out and be a participant in society and open up a dispensary within the legal
correct.
realm?
But
Unbelievable.
what
Hey,
you,
Ray, welcome to the show.
Which, by the
yeah,
way, has a
thank
whole
you. And
separate
thank you
issue,
for
by the way,
having me.
Frankie. Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead. What do you got, Deborah?
Well, so I am a native. I am also a native Long Islander. But out here in California, the legalization of marijuana has impacted access for people who are needing it for medical purposes because of the taxation. So I'm wondering, if we do something or repurposing people who have been put in for nonviolent crimes, bring them out, having them work these dispensaries or different programs. I don't know, I'm just brainstorming here, but working them in a way that would create medical dispensaries, right? Because
Thank you. I like that.
repurposing so that it's useful for people across the board. I mean, I know I actually get a prescription synthetic marijuana now because the cost in California is a 30% tax on whether it's medicinal or recreational. 30% tax now that it's been legalized, which now, of course, makes it a lot for a lot of people outside of purview for purchasing, right? And that holds whole other elements. So if we can turn around those that have been incarcerated for something that is legal in most states now, or many states at least. And the FDA has created synthetic versions of it as well because it has been proven to work medicinally.
You're talking Marinol?
Yep.
Yep. And that's covered by most insurances too, where
Yes.
marijuana is not. So I
Exactly.
understand that. Yep.
It is FDA approved. It can be used in any state. So it doesn't matter whether a state has legalized the usage of medicinal marijuana or marijuana. Marinol can be used anywhere. And it is something that I have in my toolbox of arsenals of medications and non-medicinal treatment that I do for my pain management. But if we can repurpose the growth of the marijuana, the dispensaries, the trainings, and the education to become something useful, and yeah, maybe that means we have to subsidize people when they first come out to help people get on their feet. And the reason why I'm throwing that out there too, I still have kids that I knew in high school that ended up selling drugs for the purpose of having a bed and food.
Yeah.
Because they were guaranteed that in Dewey Hall.
I mean,
in
in New York, if you're paying on average $460 a day to house an inmate for nonviolent marijuana crime, if somebody gave me $460 a day to live, I mean,
A lot of money.
it's a lot of money. I mean, let them out of prison, give them $460 a month to get them on their feet. They can find a room somewhere for that.
Can I just mention something in addition to what Deborah was saying? Remember, there's one thing that we do have to do, like teach them, is that you have to remember that when somebody's been in prison for so long, their whole life is so different that sometimes they freak out when they get all that freedom. So we have to do both. Teach them, get them into, a business. And then also, I mean, I'd rather see that money being spent on helping, and making people independent. And I mean, please, it's ridiculous. I mean, I once got kicked off a jury because I knew that this poor guy probably had, and this was in the 80s, maybe an ounce, not even an ounce of pot on him. And I'm like, oh my God, you're wasting my time.
Not only time, but your money.
My way out of it. Yeah, you're wasting my time and money.
Unbelievable.
I'm surprised they let you sit for a jury, by the way, and you were taken out because of your degree. Because I know.
Well, not only, and I also have a master's in public administration, and I was a paralegal. I actually talked myself out of another jury where the attorney who was young goes to me, "Hey, can you try this case for me?" So I think. It was more me because I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm watching you, little DA, who's going to go become a big corporate attorney because, DAs start out there because the best lawyers are trial lawyers, and that's where they start in the criminal justice system.
I'm just cracking up because nobody would have me on a jury for that exact reason, having been to law school as well. We know if somebody goes to the courtroom, right, the likelihood of them being guilty and the evidence and everything else. Plus, apparently, I can persuade people. But I think first of all, when I hear that number, $400 range, I'm just blown away because during advocacy with rare disease across America just the other day, we were talking about Social Security disability. Sometimes it's only $400 check for the month. Like for the month, right? We're not even talking a day, for the month. Where I know people selling clothing out of the closet for medication, and to think that we are paying more to keep a nonviolent prisoner incarcerated instead of re-educating, and like you were saying, Joanne, having those halfway houses, having that transition, having that mentorship, having that guidance to reintegrate into society. Like, let's dump them into society, but reintegrate with a purpose, right? That can go so much.
Well, you could even release them, but release them in a slow way. Like they get out on the weekends, but then during the week they come back in, and then you slowly reintroduce them to society, because that's why recidivism is so high, right? Because they become institutionalized, and that's what they're used to, and they're closed in, and they become, even though it's probably the worst place to live, they feel safer. And then when you put them out in the wide open, they're free, and probably become scared, and they don't know how to live.
And they can't get jobs. If they've been incarcerated and they've been, listed as a felony, you can't get most jobs, right? And you're limited by where you can work, the hours you can work, how close to a school you can work, do you interact with, youth, and if you can't get a decent salary, right? And I cannot remember, they just did a documentary on it about 4 young men that were African American that were accused of a horrific rape in Central Park, and it took 20 years to get one of them out of jail, right? And when he got out, right, he ended up back in again because he couldn't make any money, and he couldn't pay his rent or couldn't get a room, and that becomes another issue for recidivism if we're not giving the support network of a job network, first of all, right, that is willing to hire somebody, train and educate we're going to have the recidivism automatically too.
I mean, you could even have some sort of tax kickback with these smaller companies, right? Your mom and pop shops, and give them a tax break if they are willing
If they're willing.
to
Good
employ
idea.
right nonviolent inmates that are being released into society. I worked for the restaurant business for a long time, and one restaurant that I worked for, the owner of the restaurant would hire people fresh out of prison for nonviolent or heinous crimes because they needed work and he knew they would be there, and they were great workers. I mean, they really were. And when you got 70% recidivism rate, that because that's an average, 70% of people that are released back into society, they end up back in prison, and for various reasons. It could be, well, the summer's here and it's wicked hot and I can't afford air condition, but in prison it's air conditioned most times. Or in the winter they can't get housing and it's cold, so they go back to get warm. So there's all sorts of reasons why they go back. But here's another issue that I found out with the whole why people are still in prison and not being released is it marijuana possession or growing or anything. It's still illegal federally. So on a
Right.
federal level, and that's where a lot of problems lie, is because if the federal level is still convicting these people, it gives the states a hard time. And I'm going to bring Ray up and let him
Yes.
become part of the conversation here.
Before I run, because I have a meeting, didn't, and I could be remembering this wrong, but wasn't there supposed to be a previous attorney general, I can't remember, saying that they weren't going to actually prosecute for personal use marijuana because of the states coming up with their own rules? But I could be remembering wrong.
Is that federal, you're saying?
Yes.
I don't know.
could have sworn
That's interesting.
I read that, but I could be wrong. But I think the concept being right is that many states are passing legislation supporting legalization. And so I thought that was the mentality behind it, was that because states are taking and doing the state government, which is, I know, part of what we're supposed to be doing, and that they weren't going to prosecute that. But it is, when you have a different federal and a state, you have that conflict. And that was one of the reasons why I ended up getting the prescription marijuana, was because when I cross state lines, I need to be able to take my medication, with me and
Right.
not be going, "Ooh, is this state, can I carry it in here or not?" And what's going to be the issue and everything else. So that was cost. And then obviously crossing state lines, the other one.
Yeah, because if you cross into a state where it's not legal, it doesn't matter if you have a medical script or not. You're going to get some jam up. But Deborah, thanks for your participation. Thanks for showing up. I appreciate it. Ray just joined the stage, and let's hear what Ray has to say. Hey, Ray, welcome to the stage. I thankful for you being here. What you got?
Thank you for having me, Frankie. Just listening to the conversation. It's a great conversation. I really could, so many complicated issues that just open up from this. But I watched a TED Talk many years ago, and this one guy, his whole family were addicts. So he started learning about meth a lot to see what he could do to help his family.
Mhm.
And what he found out is that in Portugal, they legalized all drugs many years ago.
Really?
And what happened was they released all the drug offenders in jail that weren't violent crimes. And you were talking about how almost everybody goes back. Well, what they did is they feel that most people need to feel connected to society and they can
Right.
contribute. So if someone was interested in mechanics, they would go to a mechanic shop and say, if you hire this person, we'll pay 50% of their salary for 1 year. It's a win-win for the company because they're paying less, they're saving money on the jail. And pretty much everybody that they did that to, the numbers were high. It was like, I think in the 90s, 90% of people stopped using drugs on their own and didn't go back to jail. And so there's alternatives. We're kind of over here, it's just treatment, and they keep talking about the war on drug, but it's not really a war because we've been losing it. We have, I think, 40,000 Americans incarcerated for marijuana. We
Yeah,
have
I couldn't
2.3
find the actual
million.
percentage. It was hard for me to find the actual percentage of actual inmates that are in for marijuana crimes. The only thing I found was that about 1/10 of state prisoners are in for nonviolent marijuana convictions, and 13% are federal. And you got to remember also that you got the DEA involved, and they employ tons of people, so that how many jobs would be lost. if, they were to just legalize it all the way around, release prisoners. And, it's just one of those things, and I'm going to keep my eye on it moving forward. But actually, the half hour is up. It went really quick. I appreciate everybody contributing. Ray, thank you. Joanne, Deborah, Graciela, thanks for being here. If you look on the fortune cookie there, my website, frankiejexperience.com, followed by my email, info@frankiejexperience.com. If anybody has a show idea or any feedback on this show, or even the last one on how long a podcast should be, definitely send me an email on either one, and we'll go ahead and end it there. And I will let everybody know over the weekend what the new topic will be for Tuesday. I normally do my shows on Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but yesterday, unfortunately, I was unable to make it, and that's why I scheduled it for today. But thanks again for everybody being here and participating. I do appreciate it. And this has been another great episode of Frankie J. Raw, where we're ready, able, willing, whenever to talk about any discussion at any time. And we will go ahead and end it there. And we will be back next week, Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is actually a good weight bot song.